Hey everyone, this is Trixie, and I'm coming to you from the second day of CND. So today I mainly spent most of my time listening to the plenary discussions because there were some very interesting statements from member states as well as international organizations and civil society members. One statement that was particularly very exciting to me was the UN Working Group of Experts on People of African Descent, who were able to address the plenary discussion for the first time ever in the history of CND. And in their statement, they made it very clear that the war on drugs was systematically designed to further marginalize communities of Black people and people of African descent and has been used as a measure of social control. And it also made a very important call to action that COVID has highlighted a lot of structural issues within our societies in the past few weeks and months of the pandemic that we've been through together. And it has also given us opportunities to dismantle this system and dismantle the injustices that this system has caused. And the representative of the working group of experts on people of African descent really made a clear and strong statement that this is our opportunity to end the war on drugs. Another statement in the plenary that I was really excited about came from the representative of UNAIDS, where they talked about their new global strategy, and they really drove home the point and reiterated a lot of times that harm reduction works, harm reduction saves lives, and it was really refreshing to hear this language. And I think this year, among the member states of the Commission on Narcotic Drugs, there are more and more member states that are using human rights centered and harm reduction language, which is very much timely and overdue and needed. But it was really good to hear these insights and this perspective coming from UNAIDS, and especially with regards to their new strategy for 2021-2025, I believe, because as you might know and you might have heard in videos that we produced previously, Youth Rise did participate as a civil society consultant in the development of that strategy. We submitted recommendations for language to use that would center people who use drugs, and especially young people who use drugs, and would serve our needs better. And some of that has been reflected in the strategy, and some of that was also reflected in the statement that UNAIDS made to the plenary today. So that was very exciting and rewarding to hear.
Hi, I'm Ruby Lawler. So I just came off with a side event that I was attending called Zooming In on UNGAS. And it was basically a side event organised to promote a new report that has been released by Drug Policy Futures organisation, titled Zooming In on UNGAS. Within it, within the presentation, they detailed some of the findings from the report, and the recommendations that they gave, and you can see the report if you want on their website. They also then had Diana Joseph from Fourth Wave India come on, and she was just talking about how civil society must be more recognised by the government and for the work they're doing in prevention. It was a very prevention heavy event, and that primary prevention must be the highest priority. Then we had Philip Chimponda from Zambia also talk, and he said it's very similar to India's situation, but that he was involved in conducting surveys on new drugs entering into Zambia, and new popular drugs. And he said that the youth is mostly the most targeted in schools and universities, and that we need to keep the numbers of prevalence of use down. I also said that we must listen to children and young people to be able to come up with these prevention interventions so that we're making sure that it's the most it makes the most impact. So the event was very prevention heavy. A lot of talk about youth and how vulnerable they are, but also mentioning that they should be listened to. It wasn't exactly at the event that I expected. I expected a little bit more of a broad reflection on UNGAS, not just from the prevention side, but it was basically just all about prevention and primary prevention and parents and youth. So there was a youth aspect to it, but it wasn't particularly the youth aspect that Youth Rise would stand for so much.
On 13th April, I attended one side event titled Zooming In on UNGAS Implementations What Has Happened, which was organized by For Youth, Camping for Development and Solidarity, with the support of Fourth Wave Foundation and Movendi International, where panelists highlighted some important issues about the systematic prevalence data on 15th member states, and where panelists also flagged out about the primary preventions as a priority in national drug policy, and where also panelists shared about the real picture in the ground, which is different if we compare the national drug policies in 15 member states. The panelists almost like highlighted one major issue, which was the primary prevention, which should be listed in highest priority. There was also a panelist from Zambia who also talked about the new trending drugs coming out in market, methamphetamine, and which was taken orally. I also managed to ask to the panelist about the new trending drugs, and where he answered about the new trending drug, which is methamphetamine among young people who is drugs. And it was quite informative, and it was worth taking the side event sessions. Thank you.
Hi, so this morning I went to the side event of understanding the desistance journey of female substance abusers and the implications for their intervention. And basically, Singapore Anti-Narcotic Associations and the International Federation of Non-Government Organizations for the Prevention of Drugs and Substance Abuse and the Turkish Green Crescent Society, they talk about the specific factors among women to develop this problematic use of drugs. And I think it was a super good presentation, because they made a huge call about make a gender perspective approachment of in treatment and reinsertion. But I have the question about what about youth or women, young women, to enter in this treatment in this area of the world. So I think it's a good, but youth weren't represented in this side event.
Hey everyone, Ailish here. The first side event I went to today was called Heroin and Ibogaine Assisted Treatments in the Era of the COVID Crisis. So there's a number of speakers at this, the first one being from the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. This person talked about the importance of accessing treatment of all kinds, and in fact went so far as to say that prevention in accessing people's treatment is a crime against humanity. We had then 3 speakers from different services in Italy, Ukraine and Canada. So they spoke about the effect that heroin-assisted treatment had on the illicit market, for example, as well as the efficacy of it as a very effective treatment of opioid dependence, while also then talking about the importance of ibogaine-assisted treatment. So one of them described it as the most effective way of treating opioid addiction in their experience, while another one talks about the importance of it as part of a sort of holistic approach, and the significance, I guess, of what happens after the ibogaine assisted treatment and ensuring that services and supports are in place for people after receiving this treatment. The second side event that I went to today was titled Strengthening Community Support for Recovery. This was organised by the Singapore Anti-Narcotics Association, or SANA for short. So they had 3 speakers, one from SANA who spoke about the programs that they offer, including tattoo removal for the people in their clinics, which he said was to ensure they can gain access to employment. They also had a presenter from Macau who was running a recovery program in Macau. This guy was withholding 50% of the wages of the people in this recovery program until they completed the program. I did raise this with him as I was pretty appalled by this, and he said that the people who don't complete the program do also get their wages, but it still seems like a pretty terrible practice. The only mention of youth in this side event was from the final speaker, who was from China. And this was only when someone asked him a question about prevention and the importance of prevention rather than recovery. And he said it's important that we implement prevention practices to stop young people using drugs, basically. So not the best side event, but always interesting to hear people with other perspectives.
A side event that I attended today was focused on strengthening community support for recovery from substance use problems, and it was held jointly by China, Singapore, and it was supported by Indonesia as well. And at the event, a couple of organizations and treatment providers provided a presentation of the services that they offer to people in recovery, and it was very interesting to hear, as it always is. But there was surprisingly a lack of focus on young people and lack of mention of services targeted specifically to young people, and also the overall approach to recovery and to persons in recovery on behalf of these organizations was, in my opinion, kind of patronizing towards the individuals participating in their program. It included things like providing them opportunities to work at a cafe, a for-profit cafe that was run by the treatment provider organization. And that was a part of the reintegration to society program of that organization. So these persons in recovery would work in that cafe, bring profit to the treatment provider, but at that time they would not receive their entire wage. They would get only 50% of the wage, and the remaining 50% is being held back, and it's only given to the person once they leave the facility. So that sounded very patronizing and problematic. So me and a colleague did submit a question about it, and the treatment provider was able to clarify that participants receive this payment even if they don't manage to complete the recovery program, which was something that we were concerned about listening to, just their practices, because these programs conceptualize recovery as, very abstinence-based and kind of linear, and we know that's not true for most people. We know that that's not how recovery works for most people. So it was concerning, like what happens if a person, for whatever reason, is unable to complete that treatment program. Like, does their wages get held back? Apparently not, and apparently they do receive that, and it can act as a sort of support for them to the way the organization phrased it was to start a new life after leaving recovery, which can be very important for people who are who have problems with drug use, because it could affect their employment opportunities, their family situation, their housing situation. And these factors are interrelated in many, many ways.
The third side event that I attended today was hosted by the New Zealand Drug Foundation and co-hosted by our friends over at Yoda and EHRA, amongst some other organisations. There was a side event with a lot of focus on young people, generally focusing on education in schools and the need to improve it. Irena from Yoda spoke about some research that she did in Eastern Europe about drug education among young people, how they had experienced it, what the issues with it were, while a speaker from the New Zealand Drug Foundation spoke about the programs that they had been implementing to improve drug education in schools and to ensure that all young people in schools understand the issues related to drugs, they understand the harms that they cause, but more importantly, they understand the services that are available to them. The Centre on Drug Policy Evaluation then made a presentation about harm reduction as a form of prevention. So significantly, they showed some research from Switzerland where the implementation of safe injection facilities and other harm reduction practices actually led to quite a significant decrease in the number of new people injecting drugs in Switzerland. So it was quite an effective form of prevention of drug use.
Reporting Day 2 side event titled Improving Prevention, Prioritizing Effective Approach and Secondary Prevention, which was organized by the New Zealand Drug Foundations with the support of Canada and the Centre on Drug Policy Evaluation, the Eurasian Harm Reduction Association EHRA, and Youth Organizations for Drug Actions, where the session was started with the video projections on effective drug educations and how youth see drug educations with the theme drug educations nowadays, followed by the presentations on assessment of drug educations on 4 different countries: Bulgaria, Hungary, Lithuania, Poland and Siberia. The panelists also presented about the preparations which should be made with different approach for students for a world where alcohol and drug exist. The panelists also highlighted about shifting law enforcement approach into public health approach for prevention of injecting drug use. It was a quite informative sessions and I really enjoyed the session. Thank you.
Hi. Now I was at the side event of social integration of justice involved individuals charged with drug-related crimes in Latin America, and Chile was present. Yay! So, well, I think it was super interesting presentation, but I am not agree with a lot of what they are saying, because youth is not represented in these programs of reinsertion or reintegration of to the society. So my big question was, what happened with the youth? How can we use the prevention tools for prevent again these problems in the substance use? Because we can reintegrate people who have troubles with these issues or struggling, but how can we prevent future problems?
I also went to a side event about the book Shifting the Needle, The Impact of Global Drug Policy on Women. This is a really fantastic book, and I would definitely recommend that you check it out. It's available free as a PDF online. So they had some of the authors of the book or of the chapters within this book speaking. One of the authors, Isabel Pereira, spoke about coca farmers, women coca farmers in Colombia, how they view the coca trade, their role in the coca trade, as well as how they view state intervention in the coca trade, which was not very positive. Generally, images of soldiers invading their villages and spraying pesticides all over their fields so nothing will grow. Another speaker was from UNAIDS, and she presented some of the data, or lack thereof, I should say, available in the EECA region about women who inject drugs. There's very little data available here. The only data that is available is about HIV prevalence, and it does not paint a very good picture. In Estonia, 61% of women who inject drugs have HIV, compared to the already high 48% of men who inject drugs. The other two speakers were from the Thailand Institute of Justice and from Metzinieres. A speaker from Thailand spoke about the Bangkok rules and the importance of focusing on a gender-sensitive response in prisons and to the judicial system, while the speaker from Metzinieres spoke about her experiences as a woman who uses drugs and as a woman who was in prison. A very important side event, very important speakers, especially this last speaker from Metzinieres speaking about personal experience.
I joined the side event on the strategic importance of real-time drug data. This examined the fact that there's an existing open source together with official information that are sent by countries, and therefore member states are able to see the importance of joining the platform and be connected to the network of UNODC in order to address, the world drug problem, and also basically also presenting the information that there is that opportunity to leverage different information spaces where data can be made readily available, for instance, digital media. And a case was made for Northern and Western Africa, where there's usually information gaps in terms of what is happening on the grounds with regards to drugs and drug use. Thank you.
Hi again. And the last I went was the recent developments in cannabis policies, dangers and misconception. Blow your mind. Okay, so the only who was actually was very sensitive and very good in the very evidence-based approachment in cannabis regulation was United States, and Turkey and Russia were super restrictive, and they blame people, especially young people, to use drugs and develop mental health issues. So basically, we are bad. I felt like I am doing bad things. I don't have any opportunity or recovery. So basically, we are responsible for what we deserve as drug users. So it didn't like it, anything at all, just what they say on US, because they have more evidence-based approach to the cannabis regulation.
Hi everyone, I'm Carolina. I've attended today at the side event Innovations in Brazilian Drug Policy, organized by Brazil with the support of the UNODC Country Office of Brazil. Well, basically, I knew what I was going to talk about this side event today. Basically, there were people from the government of Brazil talking about their new drug policy, which is basically going after drug dealers or drug traffickers, as they said. What is important of this side event, I think, is that they talk about going after the money, going after the big guys here in order to stop with drug trafficking, and basically that was everything about what they talk about. Unfortunately, they didn't talk about too much about harm reduction, as you might know. What I didn't like about this is that they were addressing people who use drugs are people with chemical dependency. That was a little bit weird, but anyways, what can you expect about a country which is actually now a little bit more going after the prohibition kind of things instead of harm reduction? So anyways, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sorry, it's me again. I had to come back because I totally forgot to mention therapeutical communities, which is the answer these guys have for people who use drugs. Anything about harm reduction, anything about respect people who use drugs are human beings, just therapeutical communities, and convince people to stop using drugs as the answer to this drug problem they say Brazil has. So basically, that's it.